All right, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Lace Up with Mickey podcast. On the first episode, I've got my friend Rick Olson, owner of Olson House Coffee. I met Rick in 2016 summer. He was one of my first 20 customers. So he helped me work out a lot of the bugs on the app and a lot of the bugs in our business. And now I'm fortunate enough to have him as an avid follower of our Instagram account. So Rick, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Mickey. I always wondered how early on I got involved with you. So I never heard that number 20 before. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So a little backstory to that. My uncle started this company, Rick, in 2003, and when I started, we had no American customers at all. So basically, you were for sure within the first 20. You may have even been within the first 10 or the first 15.
Yeah.
The first year, to give you some data, I only got two customers my entire first year of doing this. So you were in there pretty early on.
And so your first year, are you referring to 2016 as far as American customers go?
First year for me was this is year five, so 2014.
Okay.
Yeah. So from January 2014 all the way to December, it was two customers. And then the second year, it was an additional 10 customers. So it was really slow getting up and running. And then year three is when you came in. And that's kind of when it started taking off.
Yes, we have a lot of parallels. When I follow you and listen to your talks on Instagram, I've told you before, there's a lot of things that you hit on that resonates with me because I'm going through the same thing. I think about the same issues and problems or challenges, and I think that anyone that would listen to this, that's an entrepreneur, they're going to have they're going to see the same things and hear the same things, and it's going to resonate with them. Also, it's really helpful. But my first year with the coffee business was 2014, so it was early 2014. So it's we got some more parallels there.
Wow. And a question, Rick, is in 2014, why did you decide to get in the coffee business?
Well, I've all my adult life, I'm 55 years old, and so my adult life, my career has always been in outside sales. And I made a couple attempts early on when I was in my 20s, both times at being an entrepreneur and starting up my own businesses. And both of those failed, made it about a year. One was in the swimming pool industry. And then the second one was in wholesaling of beef, seafood, and chicken products, starting my own business with that. So a lot of years went by. That was back in the early 1990s. And then and as I was getting older and 50 was that big number was coming up, and I was thinking about, do I want to continue down the same career path that I was currently in at the time, doing the same thing, and retire doing that unfulfilled because my heart and my mind had never given up on being an entrepreneur and seeing if I had what it takes to build a business. And so at that time, I was talking to my wife and telling her I was making good money. I was making in sales. I was basically almost all commission. I'd been doing that job for just over 10 years, and I was making over 100,000 every year. And I sat down with my wife and talked to her. I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm really feeling like I need to make a change." And she has a good job. I had a good job, and we looked at our finances, and she said, "What is it that you're going to do? What are you interested in?" So I sort of sprang this on her. I hadn't talked too much about it. We were newly married also at the time, so I didn't want to frighten her with insecurities of me wanting to just walk away from what I was doing. And so I said, I had a couple of thoughts, and one was to follow my biggest passion. And as soon as I said that, she said coffee, because I was home roasting, and I was really involved with home roasting. It was like almost like an addiction. I started out with a hot air popcorn popper. It was a Oroville Redenbacher popcorn popper, and I saw a YouTube video on how you can roast coffee. I love to cook. In fact, in our family, my wife doesn't cook. The kitchen's my room, and she can cook. It's she doesn't like to. So I've always cooked all my life, and so I always prepare the meals. And when I found out we could roast coffee, I started drinking coffee when I was 11, and she's a coffee nut also. And so when I saw that video, I'm like, I got to do that. So as a hobby, it hadn't even crossed my mind as a business, and that's where it all started. So I was home roasting, building my own little roasters, modifying them, learning about beans, just like grape wine. There's lots of intricacies. It has a lot to do with the bean, the soil, the location. And so I'm learning about all these things about coffee. It's a passion, and I'm experimenting and coming up with roast and trying all these different brews and seeing what the differences are. And after about 3 years of home roasting is when I just said, hey, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm getting older, and it's going to be too late if I don't do something now. And so that's when I sat down, told my wife that I was going to start a coffee roasting business, expand what I was doing from a hobby roaster into a professional atmosphere, and buy the equipment and start small. And the big plan was to take about 18 months to transition, to sort of test the waters, make sure that, I felt that I could make it work. And in 7 months, I was full-time into the coffee business. That was back in 2014.
Wow. And question, did you quit your job cold turkey, or was there a transition period where you had your job and the coffee roasting business at the same time?
So yeah, I was doing both at the same time, and I let my employer know that after about 2 months, I said, hey, here's what I'm doing, and this is the direction I'm headed, and I want to give you a heads up that at some point in time, and I told him 18 months, that is the target date that I'm going to transition away from the company. And he sort of laughed, and like, I think it was sort of a little bit of a shock. And at the same time, it was sort of, I think he thought that maybe, I was just, excited about something that I was doing, and it was never really going to come to fruition. So, but as time progressed, and as I was picking up new customers, and I started out, I went to Home Depot and bought a 10-foot by 12-foot shed that you would put in your yard, and then I got the health code requirements, and then outfitted that shed internally to the health code requirements so that I could get approved and be, not fly under the radar, but be legit, and have a small coffee roasting room with a small little 5-pound roaster and a hand washing basin. And I started out with a stainless steel table, a plastic hand scoop that I bought at the Dollar Tree, and a Harbor Freight scale. And I was roasting coffee and then just loading them into a bag by hand and sealing the bags with what they call a foot sealer, a heat sealer, and putting together 20 bags, and then going out to local mom and pop grocery stores and telling them who I was, what I was doing, and I was hoping they would put my coffee on their shelf. And so that's how I started it all. But that progressed pretty quickly to the point where at 7 months I had enough accounts and enough of my time that I was going to be cheating my current employer. Being outside sales, they didn't keep tabs on me. They kept tabs on my numbers, and my numbers were always fantastic. But I knew that I couldn't do both. I was starting to, it was becoming a juggling act, and I had to be fair to myself and be fair to them. And so I sort of sprang it on them and said, hey, I'm going to give you my 2 weeks.
Wow. Well, and so from there, you quit the job. You left $100K on. You basically left $100K on the table, walked away from that. And I assume you took a tremendous pay cut to do it, right?
Yeah, I had money saved, and so I figured I'd go. I could sustain myself financially for 1 year, and I thought at the end of 1 year, that the business would be at a point where I would start taking an income. And being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. That's my favorite saying. And one was I didn't understand what it took to scale a business. And so, fast forward to 1 year after quitting my job, and I go from within that first year, a 10-foot by 12-foot shed. I bought a second larger shed that was 12 feet by 20 feet. So I'm operating out of both of those. I bought a larger roaster, and I'm buying larger quantity of beans. Then I start having to get my margins up by getting my costs down. So I learned about buying coffee on contracts based on the market on on a daily basis. It fluctuates. It's a commodity. So I had to educate myself on that. And then I had to put more money in to tie in and lock it up contracts. Um, I had to buy more bags, more sealing machines. And so everything, so the money that I thought that I would be taking as an income at some point in time was going right back into the business to grow it. And so, I didn't take any money out of the company for the first 3 years.
Wow. Wow. So 3 years, you took no income, zero.
Yeah, I took, when I say no income, I mean, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I took $100 here, $100 there. I mean, my savings that I saved up was gone at the end of the first year. And so I had paid off all of my bills in advance, and I didn't have any financial commitments other than our mortgage payment. And so at that time, my wife actually had to take over the mortgage payment because I could have contributed to the mortgage, but the company would have suffered in growth. And so we both agreed that the best thing to do, she could handle the mortgage payment, and I would continue to put the money, the profits back in so that I could expedite, the growth of the business. Because I didn't take out any loans. I didn't borrow any money. I bootstrapped the business from day one. And I've done that all the way until last year. But at 3 years, there were small amounts of money I was taking, but it wasn't much. And I had to move into a larger facility. I went from those two small roasting operations to a 3,000 square foot building in an industrial park. And then, and I thought I'd be there for a long time. 3,000 square feet seemed like a lot of room. And I was in there for about a year and 3 or 4 months, and then moved into where I'm currently at, which is 5,000 square feet, a roasting facility.
Wow. So it's safe to say then that it took way longer than you thought it would take, right?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was one of those things where being in sales, I've seen a lot of businesses grow, and I hear a lot of the stories, and I knew a lot of the challenges. And the one common thread with all businesses that I've been involved with is from the salesperson looking in is cash flow. The small businesses always talk about cash flow and how there's never enough. And so I was aware of it, but I thought that I understood, what is required and how much it actually does take if you're in a growth pattern. And so but I didn't understand. And so that was a learning curve that I had to figure out and understand how to get to where I want to go and eventually start taking an income. And so for me, the cost of that was to either I had a couple of options. One was I slow down the growth of the company and take money out. The second option would be to bring in an investor and give up some of the ownership of the company and bring money in and then grow. And in the second option, I have always wanted to avoid at all costs, unless that partner was as experienced and determined in the coffee industry and as determined to grow the business as I was. And I have never found that person. So the other option would be to take out a bank loan and or a line of credit and to grow the business. And that's what I did do that last year.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to hear the story, like how you scaled it, because it's so similar to ours. I started this business coming out of college, but this is my second business. On the first go around, I made this app where we raised $1 million, and not knowing any better, I took all that money and invested it into employees, into resources for the business servers. Basically, I put the money up front for resources I didn't need at the time. So I blew through it all. That was about 2 years. Then I didn't know what to do with my life, so I went back to college. And when I graduate college, my uncle shows up with this opportunity. And I promised myself, after failing the first time, because I wanted to make it work so fast that it failed, I promised myself that the second go around I'd be more patient, right? So year one, I didn't sell anything at all. January to November, and I think it was early December, I went to LA, collected 2 checks, and came home, and those were my first 2 deals. But the whole second year, I sold about 10 deals, one of which being the largest dairy distributor in Vegas, and that kind of catapulted us. But still, year two, I'm living with my mom, right? Thank God she was able to pay the rent. Thank God she was able to cover the bills because I wasn't making any money, right? You can't live very comfortably on, let's say, $10,000 a year. At the same time, my uncle was down here in Miami, right? And he was just working out of his garage part time. Um, Actually, at that time, he had quit his job and he was doing this full time. But our other partner, Ignacio, was doing this part time, and he was a developer. So if we had problems, we had to wait for Ignacio to go on break or go on the staircase and hide from his employer to fix the issue. Um, so that went on for an additional 2 years where we had that set up until Ignacio was finally able to quit his job when the cash flow could pay for his salary, right? Because he was making a buck 50 at his job, and then he was
Yeah.
making from us another 60 or 70. So I mean, you're talking about 220,000 that he was making. So it was hard for him to justify quitting his job and coming working here full time.
Right.
Um, so, anyways, after that, I stayed in Vegas for another year. We were always really careful. We always made sure that the company's cash flow could cover any moves, any new employees, or any expenses. And that's what's allowed us, like you. Uh, in your case, you wanted to speed it up, which is why you took a line of credit. In our case, I wanted to take the credit, but they refused to. So that's why it took longer. And with that cash flow, we were able to pay all the expenses. And eventually, I was able to move from Vegas to Miami and be here in the office with the rest of the team. So the story is almost, I mean, it's extremely similar. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that often we think that we're sort of unique in the experiences and things that we go through, our trials and business tribulations. And I think I'm coming to learn, and I think believe that it resonates with all small businesses, what we talk about, what we've discussed before. It's there's so many similarities, and so that's powerful because that means that I'm not spending enough time with other successful small business owners getting insights and information from them because I think they won't understand the coffee business is too different than, it's not the same as direct store delivery business. Someone that has like yourself that has your business, your company, your software oriented, what could we share that would help each other? And I've made a mistake. I've come to realize when it comes to, asking questions and talking with other owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I used to feel the same way. But right around when I got into high school, my mom started dating an individual that owned a bunch of casinos in Vegas. And for some reason, he took me under his wing. And to this day, him and my mom aren't together anymore, but he still keeps in touch with me. He's like a father figure to me. And when I sat down with him and he told me about his problems starting to grow his casino business, they were exactly the same as our problems. And he just said he told me a couple things. His number one rule is if you give good service, you'll never go broke, right? That was his
Mm-hmm.
number one rule. And I was like, well, that applies directly to us because at the end of the day, we're not selling anything special to our customers. We're selling them a solution that 10 other people could give them, but those 10 other people can't give the service that we can, right? That's the first thing. And then the second thing that he always told me was to reinvest the money, at least the majority of the money that we made back into the business for more employees. He said employees equal money. And his sayings seem really rudimentary and really simple, but he's a really simple guy that's made hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So he gave me this
Yeah.
formula, and all I did was apply it to this business, and that's why we have a business today. And that's why all these businesses, at the end of the day, they're all the same thing. So I completely agree with you 100% on that.
What So with your current customer base, is it really diversified, or is there a lot of people in the food business? Because I was going to just comment about how I got hooked up with you guys, why I chose you and whatnot. But I'm sort of curious first um, if your customer base is it narrow or is it diversified? Because I have no idea.
That's a great question. So in addition to food, we work with a lot of people that distribute to convenience stores, like iPhone cable chargers. We work with a lot of chemical companies. Basically, if you think of a store and the things that are kept on the display, a distributor in some scenarios brings those product into the store. So that technically our system could apply to any distribution business. That being said, food and beverage is 90% of what we deal with because it's the since I mean it's because we've been able to focus on the food and beverage industry. We've been able to make the small tweaks to the software that benefit those distributors the most, rather than those that sell iPhone cables, for example.
Right.
So to answer your question, 90% food, 10% the other things that I told you about.
Yeah, because when I started searching, I had a, they're a competitor, even though their technology was ancient. But I had another system that I was using.
Mm-hmm.
It was clunky. It wasn't. They couldn't make any changes. You had to live with what you got. It was affordable for me, and that's how I ended up with that particular system. Other than in the long run or in the big picture, it really wasn't that affordable. I had to buy handhelds that were specific for for the industry and for that task. It wasn't. I couldn't go and buy a Android-based phone and use that. So I had to buy some expensive Motorola gear, and then I had to. Every time I had issues or problems, it was calling up customer service that usually got a hold of somebody. I got a hold of somebody that couldn't really deal with the problem at the time, and the person I needed to speak to was going to give me a call back, and sometimes it was the next day, and it was a continual battle because they had continual problems and software locking up. It was really it was better than what I was doing from the point of view of inventory and keeping my books, because I could download the information at the end of the day and into QuickBooks. And so that was what I was wanting to do, instead of manually having to write out on a receipt pad receipts. And as I got into bigger and more important accounts, they would accept that. But it was pretty frowned upon. So that's why I had to transition. And then when I sort of got fed up with that company, and for a small business, the problem was there was plenty of other businesses that had direct store delivery software and equipment, but they were set up for large companies. They didn't cater. They weren't designed for a small startup or a small company. They were looking at the national brands, and I mean it was, their systems were out of my way beyond what I was able to spend, and it wasn't going to cater to my needs because I was just too small. So I remember just I research everything like crazy. It doesn't matter if I'm going to buy something or if I just want information. I do a lot of research, and I had looked for a system for a long time that was better than what I was currently using. And for some reason, one day you guys popped up on a Google search, and that's how I found you guys. I guess that was about 2016. And then when you told me about your system, how it worked, the equipment that was required, and your costs, I was like sort of blown away, wondering, wish I would have found you earlier. But it sounds like probably in 2014 would have been pretty hard to find you. But yeah, so it was a really good solution. And it was a game changer as far as freeing my time up, because I was spending hours every week on the phone with this other company. So I mean that was the beginning with you guys.
Well, thank you, Rick. I mean, the funny thing is when we first started, I don't know if you remember, but you sent me a package. And that package had the phones that you wanted me to set up for you and the printers.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, back then I was the one doing everything. So I did the implementation. I took all of your phone calls. I think there were days where you called me in the evening really late because you'd have a problem or you couldn't export to QuickBooks. I handled all that for not only you, but for all the customers that I was doing. And that kind of segues into my next point. Like it's super important to start from the bottom, right? To start doing all the jobs in your company. I was never afraid to do the jobs that you would call, $8 or $9 an hour jobs. So when you started seeing me, I sold it to you, I implemented you, and then I gave you the support. I was basically all of LaceUp solutions for our entire business. And I want to kind of turn the question back to you. I mean, would you say there were some parallels where you started, where you were taking care of everything from top to bottom?
Yeah, when I started out, I did everything. I don't have the exact timeline, so I mean, I could be off a little bit here, but I think for the first 2 years, I was 100% on my own. So I designed my own bags with the bag manufacturer's crappy software, and I had these bags that were better than nothing, but I had to do it myself because I didn't have any money to pay a graphic designer. And I'm not a graphic designer. I knew nothing about it. So it's another learning lesson just to get these bags done and finished. I had to spend countless hours learning how to do this graphic design with their software, which wasn't a software that was available on the market. It was their own in-house developed software for their company. So, but yeah, I was designing the bags. I was roasting the beans. I was ordering the beans. I was doing the books. I was doing the deliveries. I was handling all phone calls, and I got to the point I guess it was year 2, where I was literally working myself to death. I didn't feel like the money was there to bring in on one person, because I was so concerned about that at 2 years not taking a paycheck, and if I brought another person on, I sort of lost the big picture, and that was that 2 people can get a lot more done than one person. And so if I want to get to where I'm going, I've got to duplicate myself. And I was doing it all, working many 18-hour days, and usually nothing less than 14 hours. And I had a heart attack. And so at age 50, or in 2015, it was July 4th. I was out digging and shoveling. I had a heart attack. So it was not even 2 years into the business, and I was working myself to death, but I was doing everything. And then that's when I made the decision that I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to stop the business. I was going to hire, and then just figure out how the money was going to, how I was going to come up with the money. I had enough money to pay someone for help, which what I needed was deliveries and bagging. I need someone in the shop that was going to bag, get the product ready to go, and help with deliveries. And I could pay someone for 3 months to do that, and then I was going to be short on money. My overhead was increasing, and I just figured, well, I got 3 months to increase sales to the point where I can keep this person, and it obviously happened.
Wow, that's crazy, Rick. And would you say, I mean, I know you started the shop, right, the coffee shop. Are those some of the reasons why you transitioned over to the shop, or is it a passion of yours? Like, why did you decide to make that leap?
So basically, I just want to have not as many, but I want to diversify my revenue streams. Mm-hmm. And so originally, I started out with grocery stores selling 12-ounce bags. So I mean, you look in the grocery shelf in a big grocery store, and you have Starbucks, Pete's. The East Coast is different, Dunkin' Donuts, and you see all these different brands and names. And so I looked at the margins. I looked at what I could make, what I thought I could sell the product for, and that's where I started. And I thought that I was just going to go in that direction and then grow the business. But I had heard from everybody, that's the worst idea you could possibly have, is to go and compete against national brands and grocery stores. You'll never do it. So you might as well just go ahead and take whatever money you're going to spend and just burn it, because that's what you're going to end up doing. And so I was looking at a marketing plan and strategy, and I was trying to figure out if I could make it work. And I saw that I could, but while I was looking at the market, coming up with a marketing plan, I started thinking about restaurants and where else, in case this does fail, where else can I sell coffee and have a separate revenue. And so then I looked at coffee shops and restaurants, and wholesaling food service 5-pound bags instead of 12-ounce bags in the grocery store shelves. And then I always had a website, and it was an e-commerce website, and I didn't know much about. I knew next to nothing about how to get customers on the internet to find my website and buy my product. I did, I like I did the first thing probably a lot of entrepreneurs do, and that's like I bought Google Ads, and I got 0 sales, and I spent a lot of money. Then I hired 2 different people at 2 different times to do that for me, to do the marketing. They were quote unquote experts at it. They were local people that were experts, and that they've produced so much revenue and all these sales. And so I hired them and spent thousands of dollars and got literally no results. And so I thought, man, this is crazy. How do you succeed on the internet? So I just said, if it's going to be done, I don't have the money, because like legitimate big companies that would come in that I felt like would do it, that could do it and do it right. We're talking, $5,000 or $10,000 easy just to get going. And so I just, started researching and reading and listening to people online explaining how to do it. And I started getting the grasp of it. And so over time, I started developing that. So that was another revenue stream. So I just kept building revenue streams that, were associated with coffee. There was other things that came up. I had some ideas about how to improve equipment in the coffee roasting industry that would be very useful, but that was too far outside of what I was doing. It's a completely separate business. And I know Mark Cuban, I read his book, and he said one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is that they're always excited about money, revenue, and the next exciting thing, and that you don't want to lose your focus. Concentrate on what you're good at. Don't concentrate on the next thing that sounds great that's going to earn you a lot of money. And so I thought that's too far outside of what I'm doing. Maybe in the future at some point in time I'll do that, but for now I'm going to just grow my revenue streams that are focused on selling coffee beans. And so so with the internet, with the grocery store retail, with the wholesale and restaurants and coffee shops, and the next revenue stream would be a coffee house, where I could roast my own coffee, sell it in my own coffee house. And what I realized with that business model is it's sort of like a gas station, or sort of like being a Chevron or Shell or BP, where you extract your own oil and you sell it at your own gas station. So you're making a profit on that business twice. And so I realized, hey, if I'm importing my coffees from Central and South America and I'm roasting them and then I sell them to myself, so to speak, at my restaurant location, then I make a profit on selling it to my restaurant, and then I make a profit again selling it to the customers. And that's a really great vertical business. And once that light went off and I saw that big picture, then I realized that is a really important direction. So I've just started in that direction, but it takes a lot more money than the other directions.
Wow, Rick. So basically you found a way to extract profit twice from something you're already doing, and at the same time pivot your business to something that I think you mentioned to me before you enjoy doing a little bit more. Am I right?
What is that?
The store. I mean,
I
think you said you enjoy it much more than what you were doing before.
Yeah, I mean, I like people. I like dealing with people. So, at both levels, you're dealing with people. But with the wholesale business, I'm dealing with someone that's spending money and buying from me. They're not the consumer. They're not the end user. And so people are excited. It's a 50-50 split, or I don't know if it's 50-50, but you get both. You get some people that are like cutting me a check on, oh, here goes another $300 or $400, but they know that that's going to make them money, but they, it takes them away from doing other things. It's just, some people are not that happy about writing me checks, not because of my product, but just because the situation they're in. And then you've got other people that are like, seeing the growth of the company, and they know that they're part of it. And that's what I always try to translate to my wholesale customers, is that, hey, it's great. Small businesses or businesses always need to help each other, because the more successful I can help you to sell these coffee beans, the more money you're going to make, but you're going to help me grow. So it's like a partnership, and it's a win-win for everybody. It's just great to be able to do this, and just positive, vibe I put onto everything. But the coffee business, the drive up the restaurant, is really nice because I get to talk to the end user. And so there's a fair amount of competition where I'm at in this location. We're in Northern California. And so, every single day, so I looked at and studied what the other locations are doing, and looked at the most successful one and focused on what they were doing. And they don't have competition competition. It's a national company, growing Starbucks repeats, but it's a West Coast company. But I guess I shouldn't say national. I don't believe they are national, but they have more locations than a lot of national companies. And so I just focused on what they were doing, and every day to have customers making the switch over to this coffee shop and getting, we do all kinds of things, not just coffee here. We also do infused energy drinks and infused teas, and we do smoothies. And so we're doing non-coffee items, but that's what the competition's doing, and they're killing it. And so we're also in, doing that business. But yeah, I enjoy that more because growing this business, do it because I want people to enjoy the product. And so when I get to see those people face to face and hear how they enjoy the product, when they say it's so much better than the going to year for me, it's and it sort of sounds cliche. People say it, and I think some people mean it and some people don't. So I don't like to say it too much, but it really isn't about the money for me. I just I truly believe that if I do what I love, that I have a passion for, that and I do it right, that the money's going to be there. It's going to follow. So I've been too highly concerned about it, and you've got to generate it. But it's not to become rich. If that happens, that happens. But it's more about providing a product that people are going to enjoy, and that's what motivates me.
Wow. And I think you found the formula, because even speaking to you now, the conversations that we have together are much different. I feel like, it feels to me like you're much happier, because I remember back when we were both getting started, some of the conversations were, and maybe it's because you had problems with our system and you were just mad at me, but the conversations weren't as positive as they are now. And I'm so happy to see you doing what you love, and I'm happy to see you happy, because at the end of the day, like I think the money's inevitable, but the happiness is the difficult part.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I that a lot, all the time. Once I became aware of the fact that the stress of the business was affecting my attitude, and it's affecting my life. And so after I had the heart attack, I realized that I had to learn to take time and act when there was issues or problems that came up, instead of immediately reacting and saying things I shouldn't say, or not thinking it all the way through. So and with employees, there's always issues and problems, and I just learned, I came to realize that I had to get a lot better at that, and that I was in control of my actions and my feelings, and they did not control me. So I continually, that's a struggle that I deal with, but I'm getting better at it.
Yeah. And it makes it honestly, whatever you've been doing makes it a pleasure to talk with you. I know we're doing this podcast, but in general, like whenever we have a conversation, I love listening to the experiences that you have, because I take away a lot of points. And that's why that's why I recommend, hey, put some of this stuff on video, because it's so good. Even if it's not going to sell you coffee, I bet you it's going to bring value to somebody out there that's going to go down the same journey in the future, And I really believe that your story is extremely entertaining and extremely educational for someone younger like me to learn from a lot of those mistakes that you made, and a lot of the takeaways that you learned, and the things that you were able to do to make this thing a success. So I just want to say, thank you for sharing everything with me. And not only that, but for being the first person to volunteer to be a guinea pig for this podcast. I appreciate it.
No, it's great to be able to talk about it, because hopefully that's what the result is. It's someone hears some things, and that it helps them, because I think what comes around goes around, and that I think you have to give it away to keep it. That's another phrase that I like. If I give away my knowledge and what's helped me, it helps me keep what I have, because I just believe that there's like a universal principle, and that sounds like maybe a little hocus pocus to some people, but I don't know. I'm in School of Hard Knocks, banging my head against the wall. I've learned some things, and that I just think that's a principle that is universal, and that I always try to abide by that. I don't worry about what the competition has to say. If I talk about what I'm doing and why it works and how I'm doing it, then most of the competition, they won't implement it anyhow. I don't even worry about them. They're just not even relevant actually to me. So
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, on this call, I mean, on this podcast, we've covered so many points that I wrote down a last question for you, right? Something that
Yeah.
we could, a takeaway that we can give the audience, one point that if you could erase the rest of this podcast and leave only, 5 or 10 seconds, leave the audience with one point, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think probably I get asked fairly often by people that want to start a business and they have an entrepreneurial spirit, but they are either scared to start, it seems intimidating, or they're just not sure if they can do it. Um, I think the one thing I would tell anybody that is even current business owners that are struggling or are new, that surround yourself, your support network, by people that support you in what you're doing. Even if family is negative towards what you're doing, if you are going to be successful at it, I think you have to get rid of the negativity. And when I say get rid of it, you don't have to excommunicate yourself from family members, because I had family members telling me that I was, at my age, at this stage in life, to start over and to do what I'm doing, I could ruin my retirement. And so for me, and I heard that constantly, and so I just quit talking to them about it. And if they asked, I wouldn't discuss it with them. I said, let's talk about, we talk about family or talk about something else. Just change the subject. And on social media, when I started on my Facebook page, when I would post pictures of customers and happy customers and my new bag style or whatever it had to do with the business, the negative comments that I got, which was amazing, because a lot of these people are supposed to be my friends, but there's always people that want to shoot you down. I just ignored them and said, you know what, I'll let them make their comments, but I'm not going to respond to them. And that what I will do is, through my actions, I'll let those speak louder than any words. And so let the negativity, let go of it. Don't fight it. Don't justify anything with people, and use it as fuel to drive you. And that's because you've got to stay focused and driven, because there's going to be good times, but there's a lot of hard times, and that'll get you through it.
Yeah, and that's an unbelievable takeaway, because to form another parallel between you and I, when I started and I was struggling for the first 6 months, I hadn't made any sales. It was my mom every single day telling me to quit, right? Because she was like, "Hey, go get a job. You need to make money. You can't live here forever and not have something that's going to grow and make you money long term." So I had to listen to that, but I said, "No, Mom, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work." And we got in so many fights about it. There were so many points where I was close to quitting when I was listening to her, but I got to the point that I was like, you know what, screw it. Either it's going to fail or it's going to succeed. It's a binary outcome. There is no in between. So I'm going to do it a little bit longer, and that's why I persevered. I stopped listening to her. I kind of disconnected all my social media. I didn't care about anyone's opinion besides my fiance's at the time. She was patient with me, because at the time she was the one making money and I was the one struggling, right? Even though we hadn't lived together, when you go out on a date and you want to pay for a dinner and you're the one that can't pay for it, as the man, it sucks.
Yep.
But I just listened to those that supported me, and if my mom's listening, she knows it's true, but she's happy I persevered anyways now that it's successful. But I agree with you 100%. You have to ignore those people, and then you just have to dive in head first and do it, which is why I'm doing this podcast. I woke up one day and I'm like, and honestly, it was you that motivated me to do it. When we had that last conversation, not this last one when we spoke yesterday, but a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
to myself, well, why don't I document this conversation and bring value to the audience, and also bring value to you? So where I want to close this at is, I want you to share with the audience, where they can find you, what social media you're on, where you post your content, your handles, and I'll make sure to include those in the description for everybody.
Okay. Well, that's easy. You can find us on Google or search engines at olsonhousecoffee.com, and Olson is spelled Olson, so it's olsonhousecoffee.com. Facebook is Olson House Coffee, and Instagram is Olson_house_coffee.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Rick.
Yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about the business. And I just want to add at the end that I think these podcasts hopefully are going to go out to potential new customers for yourself, and that your customer service, and it's big to me. I'm a big stickler on customer service. Your customer service with your company is fantastic. You can't go wrong with LaceUp. The system is geared for, I don't know how big you guys go, but it's geared for the small direct store delivery businesses, and I think it's the best one out there. I always constantly shop and keep tabs on what is, if there's better options. So I would definitely highly recommend your company, and I just got to throw that in there for you.
Well, thank you, Rick.